How's it going, everybody? My name is Philip, and today we are learning some new history. And by new history, I mean stuff that's already happened. It's not new. It's just I've never heard of it. There's also because this is in Australia. This happened in Australia, apparently in 1932. I mean, you know what I'm reacting to. The Great Emu War. Don't even know what that's about. But, honestly, Australia, I've been thinking about moving over to you guys with the way that politics are going here. So, might as well learn some more of the Australian history, okay? So, I'm excited to learn about this. This just sounds very random. And I love random history. I do. The more bizarre, the better. I love bizarre things. So, without further ado, let's check out the Great Emu War. Now, this is by Extra History. This is only part one. I was thinking about putting both parts in, but that will make it a little bit longer. And if you want to only watch one part or one certain part, I still should probably put them both in this entire video. We'll see how I feel at the end of this video. At the end of this specific thing that I'm reacting to. That's about to be right here. So, let's check it out.
Australia, October 1932, as
Right.
Gandhi began his hunger strike and Hitler circled the chancellorship of Germany, George Pearce, Australia's Minister for Defense, was faced with two questions that would define his career. One, could a group of farmers from Western Australia get their hands on some machine guns? And two, could they shoot them at some emus? Now, normally, these weren't questions a defense minister would entertain. But this defense minister, at that moment in time, answered them with a quick and enthusiastic yes. He would be the first man in history to lead his country in a war against the emu.
Why? I will say I also really like the animation style. It's just silly.
Thanks so much to
It's
Morning
great.
Brew for helping
I love
bring
it.
this history to life. Real quick up top, once again, please welcome our esteemed guest writer for this series from the super fun history podcast Something True, Duncan Fife. Thanks for bringing the birds, Duncan. Strange as it might sound, until 1932, nobody ever really thought to fire a machine gun at an emu. I know, shocking.
Yeah.
In Australia, the big bird even shares pride of place with the kangaroo on the nation's coat of arms. But the farmers of Western Australia's wheat belt soon came to see that heraldry as an insult. For it celebrated a loud, rabble-rousing pest that stomped their wheat, scared their sheep, and burst open holes in fences that let rabbits rush in to do even more damage. Though, in fairness, what the emu saw was simply wide open spaces that were supplied with fresh water and plenty of wheat.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but couldn't they just build better fences? I don't know. I'm not someone that does construction or works in a construction area type of thing. So I ask stupid questions like this. But could they not have built better fences?
AKA the ideal migratory destination for the enormous avian. But let's take a step back for a minute and look at how these farms grew to be an emu's paradise. After the First World War, Australia made its returning servicemen a deal. See, it was sitting on 24 million acres of land, and it wanted to sell or lease that land to the returning soldiers, setting them up as farmers. One catch, though, that land was awful. The scheme was designed in part to get somebody, anybody really, to settle in and harvest the most desolate parts of a very large country. Unfortunately, there was actually one more deeply disturbing catch. Of approximately 800 Aboriginal men who served in the war, only 3 had applications approved under the settlement scheme. In fact, some of the land was even taken from Aboriginal reserves.
Oh, yeah, no,
if
they've
you were
learned
an
that from
Aboriginal
English.
soldier, you actually had a better chance of losing land than gaining it. And
Damn.
that's just something to keep in mind for later if you find yourself having a particular sympathy for men getting humiliated by birds. Just think about this. But anyway, as we were saying, the land wasn't very good for Western agriculture. In particular, the small towns of Campion and Wagulin, 200 miles from Perth, were the toughest farmland in the country. There, every stalk of wheat that could be grown had to be grown. And not just for the farmer's own sake, because wheat was...
Okay, so now I'm starting to understand the answer to my stupid question. Why not build better fences? Probably didn't have the money or the resources to do so. So, my bad. I apologize. But there's other reasons, let me know. Maybe they didn't have the time, the people that would fall under resources, I guess. Anyways, yeah, here we go.
Was a major Australian export. It
Sorry.
was a tough existence. And then, in 1929, came the Great Depression. Unemployment skyrocketed, and the government offered the wheat farmers a bailout by guaranteeing them a decent price on their crops. But then they went back on their word once the depression worsened. So the wheat farmers were losing their shirts. And despite multiple promises from multiple governments, assistance never came. In fact, they were so mad that they decided, one day in 1932, that Australia would simply have no wheat at all that year.
There you go.
They'd rather throw it all away than prop up a government that treated them so poorly. A standoff was coming, and it would have happened, except for one thing. Actually, more like 20,000 things. Emus. 20,000 rowdy emus had just made it and were ready to rumble. Hooting and hollering, they surged west in a feathery tidal wave right for the wheat fields of Campion. Now, if you happen to have never had the displeasure of an emu storming your wheat fields, here is what the farmers saw.
I would
the
love
average emu stands 6 feet tall and stands for nothing. Nothing, of course, but emu survival. They stay on the move in packs, scouring the land for resources like a marauding band of pirates, completely indifferent to the rule of law.
Okay.
And that's what makes them such a dangerous
I was about to ask what made them even go towards the west. Like, were they just migrating? But obviously they don't fly, so it's like a form of migration. I don't know. Maybe they're just going more west for water or something. I don't know. But okay, if they're just roaming the land for resources, makes sense.
That and that they run incredibly fast, 30 miles an hour to be precise. They're lightweight, tough, and muscular, and are equipped with 6-inch razor-sharp claws on their toes, meaning they're deadly in a scrape and poorly suited for most ball sports. They thought the wheat fields were a wonderful prize, plenty to eat, and what they didn't take, they'd get to trample underfoot or poop on. A natural enemy for the farmer. And indeed, emus had terrified the wheat fields for years. And by 1923, farmers had successfully lobbied to have the emu designated as vermin, with the government subsidizing bounties for any hunter bringing home an emu head. But they had never seen emus in numbers like this before. 20,000? That was a national emergency.
Are they good enough to eat?
Hunters had not signed up to take down that many birds, okay? Fences.
I only ask because that's a lot of bird meat to not eat. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, you whatever you kill, you can then sell the meat or then eat the meat.
Couldn't keep them out. And while the farmers got off a few shots with their rifles, they assuredly weren't going to be able to fend off this foul force with such insignificant firepower. But, being ex-soldiers, they knew where to get some more. One of the most effective weapons of the First World War was the Lewis gun, a light machine gun that shot 550 rounds a minute with an effective range of 880 yards. It was one of the greatest machines of modern warfare, a potent symbol of man's increasing power of destruction, and just the thing to put down a flock of birds. Huh?
You'd expect.
But to get their hands on these guns, a coalition of Campion wheat farmers made a direct appeal to the Minister of Defense, George Pearce, who was also, importantly, an elected senator for the state of Western Australia. Pearce, like anyone whose career depended on the voters of Western Australia, was very preoccupied with thoughts and fears of secession. Although the federal government of Australia was only 30 years old, the state of Western Australia had for some time been agitating to leave, believing that the state, its people, and their interests would be better served by self-governance. So, the Depression had dealt the state massive economic damage, and this unhappiness fueled an organized secession movement that was fast building toward a referendum on independence. And that was something Pearce was actively campaigning against. Also, Pearce was well aware that the government had failed to give any meaningful financial aid to the wheat farmers of Western Australia after putting them there in the first place. But with this overture from the emu distressed farmers, he saw that what he could offer, and what might earn him just as much political goodwill as money, was a really big gun to shoot some emus and save a union. And if nothing else, remember this, because it's an important lesson in the workings of democracy. If there are enough votes in it, the government will let you kill any bird you want. Now, Pearce had no way of knowing if it would be effective to turn weapons of war on a rampaging horde of emus. I mean, it had never been tried before, and a machine gun is not the emu's natural predator after all. But given the opportunity, Pierce was eager to provide a show of force, a dramatic and undeniable demonstration of his party's friendship with the good, hard-working constituents of Western Australia. Although he wasn't going to pay for it. So here's the deal Pierce struck. The farmers could have the benefit of 2 machine guns, but those guns could only be used by soldiers from the Royal Australian Artillery. The state government would have to pay for the transport of those guns, and the farmers had to arrange for the soldiers' accommodation and food. Meaning, it was an official military operation at a price, but one the farmers were willing to pay.
That's
The
weird.
emus, by contrast, unfortunately weren't able to earn or really understand the concept of money, which did put them at a significant disadvantage in the brewing conflict. Pierce sent the farmers of Campion 2 Lewis guns with 10,000 rounds of ammunition,
Damn.
and those guns were under the command of Major Gwynedd Meredith, who was supported by 2 other soldiers, McMurray and O'Halloran, plus, usually, a cinematographer. And you know, that Pierce thought to insist on a cameraman does reveal how much he considered the mission to be a political opportunity. Because, I mean, think about it. What economically depressed farmer in Western Australia
Is
would
there actual
ever vote
footage
to
of this?
secede after seeing wonderful footage of a soldier murking an emu with a machine gun, right? That's political gold right there. Meredith and his men set out for the front lines in Campion, confident of success. So confident, in fact, that they left with an order from their comrades in the Army's mounted infantry units to collect 100 emu skins to make stylish feathered hats for the officers. And come on, why would they not be confident? Why wouldn't they be able to come home with nice new hats? The Australian Army had helped win a world war, so really, what were a few thousand birds? The wheat farmers, George Pierce, Meredith, and his men. They all assumed that the emus would be easy pickings. But on the day they arrived in emu
I'm guessing otherwise.
massive guns in tow, they had no idea of the painful lesson
I love
they
this
were about
picture.
to learn. That when you assume you are made an ass by an emu. Of course, you can see why this version of the saying never really caught on, because generally sayings don't require diagrams, but you get the idea. It's going to get real next episode. I cannot wait for you all to see it.
Okay, yep, no, we're doing
But
both
until we get
episodes.
to release round 2, why not check out some Morning Brew?
So here we go, episode 2.
Western Australia, November 2nd, 1932. For months, the soldiers turned wheat farmers of Campion and
weird.
Wagga have suffered the depredations of the terrible emu. After a vigorous mating season, the gangly, rambunctious birds had migrated west, dashing their massive bodies against wire fences until they fell, then trampling the precious crops under the ecstatic dance of their sharp claws.
Also, when I made the comment earlier about why they build better fences, it makes it sound like this happened, like, yeah, okay. No, I have a better understanding now of why they didn't build better fences. I mean, because the first time it happened, they're like, what the fuck? And then they went and did that. Okay, yeah.
With
Just
conventional
ignore that stupid
methods
question.
of bird deterrence failing, the farmers found themselves chasing down flocks of emus in their cars and on bicycles, waving sticks at the birds, who were so gleefully wiping out their livelihoods by spraying urine across hard-grown rows of wheat. But there were so many emu, and they were so fast, all seemed lost. That is, until a transport came over the horizon, carrying 3 soldiers from the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery
go.
and 2 mighty machine guns.
Just 2.
Ah, yes! The farmers rejoiced. Perhaps they had
Makes it
lost
sound
the
like-
emu battle, but today was the dawn of
It
the
didn't work.
Emu War. Thanks so much to HelloFresh for continuing to help us bring history to the table. At 45 years old, Major Gwynedd Meredith had seen some action, but not often against birds. Compared to the violence of the Great War, he considered this campaign more like a zoo visit. And
you
it's fairly
think.
easy, though
You would
not
think,
pretty, and,
but-
let's be honest, basically a dick move for a machine gun-toting soldier to shoot animals at a zoo. Meredith's plan was to herd the emus together for quick killing, because while his Lewis guns were powerful, they were cumbersome and not easily mobile. So
Yeah.
with the farmer's help, he and his 2 soldiers attempted to shepherd a couple dozen emus into range of the
Just
guns.
don't- yeah,
but
just
the birds were not so easily corralled. Chased by Meredith, the flock split into smaller groups and fled, running away at 30 miles an hour. This might be harder than he thought, but surely not harder than fighting an enemy battalion or an aircraft. The targets these guns were designed to shoot. These were birds, and the bigger the bird, the easier it should be to hit with a machine gun, right? Well, most folks thought so anyway. In fact, Meredith's superiors, right up to the Minister of Defense, had been so confident in the success of the mission that they'd sent a cameraman to capture propaganda footage of the colony and a
want to
request
see
for
this
100
footage.
emu skins to make nice new hats for the boys back home. Thankfully, the following 2 days brought better luck. Meredith's guns downed a couple of targets, though this made no difference to emu morale, and the birds continued their devastation of the fields. Seeing this, Meredith had an epiphany. If he was going to deliver on expectations, he needed to start making bigger moves. So he planned an ambush at an emu watering hole. And this time, 1,000 emus walked into his trap. But when Meredith gave the order to fire, the machine guns jammed. Good thing the camera crew was there. By the time they cleared the jam, engaged the enemy, and held their breath for the dust to settle, the vaunted tools of modern war had killed only 12 emus.
Oh my
More
gosh.
wounded, sure, but undeterred by the bullets lodged in their surprisingly tough hides, most managed to escape. Meredith couldn't believe how much punishment an emu could take without going down. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world, he said. They can face machine gun fire with the invulnerability of tanks. Then the farmers shared their own hard-won wisdom. There's only one way to kill an emu. Shoot him through the back of the head. But Meredith would have to catch them first. Giving up his ambush tactics,
seems to be the
he mounted a gun on a truck
most
and chased the
difficult
emus
problem.
down. But the birds were still faster, and the ground too bumpy for the gunner to shoot with any accuracy. Also, by now, the birds were keeping to smaller groups, almost strategically, almost as though they had a leader. In each pack, the soldiers observed a, quote, big black-plumed bird, which stands fully
Reminds
6
me
feet
of,
high and
the
keeps watch
Roadrunner.
while his mates carry out their work of destruction
From the Wile E.
and warns
Coyote
them of our approach. And it was
cartoons.
at this moment of despair, a moment in which one comes to believe in the existence of an emu commander and intelligence chief, that Meredith and his men were ordered back home immediately. Just as things were getting worse, and the emus were descending in greater force upon Campion, had mighty Australia surrendered. Meanwhile, in Parliament, members had been asking the Prime Minister uncomfortable questions, like was an emu war really the best way to deal with a pest control problem? Who was paying for it? Oh, and also, wasn't all of this just incredibly silly? Yes. Yes, it was. In Parliament, the opposition called it a farce, and the press reported that the emus were more than holding their own in the war, which I think we can all agree is a very bad look. So George Pierce, the Minister of Defense,
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
officially declared the emu war over, with only 300 birds dead. Turns out, nobody in the army would be getting any new hats after all. This decision, while politically expedient, was terrible news for the settlers of Campion and Wagulin, whereas the emus, now emboldened, continued their ravages. So once again, the farmers begged for assistance, dispatching urgent telegrams from the very much still active battlefront. Emus beginning reappear large numbers, wired one farmer in Campion, and from Wagulin. We urgently desire Lewis gun crew to assist here. Enormous number of emus doing untold damage. All right, back to square one then. Almost. Because what the farmers had now was an
Now
ally,
what?
a convert in Major Gwyneth Meredith, for he had been transformed by what he'd seen in the West. The damage done by these birds has to be seen to be believed, Meredith protested to his superiors. Sitting behind one's desk, he said, one could not imagine the horrors of the Emu War. The birds were nigh invulnerable and poised to bring Australia to the brink of agricultural catastrophe.
Oh, I love these
They
pictures.
needed to be stopped. He
These illustrations
needed
are
to stop
amazing.
them. And so, in the interest of agriculture, Pierce agreed to redeploy Meredith and his men to the front lines, in an attempt to bring an honorable end, once and for all, to the Emu War. November 13th, 1932. Many men fear emasculation, but few know how it feels to be emasculated by an emu that is emusculated. Meredith, by contrast, had been emusculated hard by the big birds in a theater of war. So now his response was to drown the desert in blood. His first day back, Meredith killed 40 emus.
Oh, wow.
And by December, he and his men were putting down 100 a week. As he did,
Damn.
George Pierce was asked in Parliament, was there not a more humane method to cull the troublesome emus? Poison, perhaps? Maybe stronger fences? To which Pierce replied that he thought machine guns were pretty humane. On December 10th, 1932, they declared their mission accomplished. Meredith and his soldiers returned home in triumph, claiming to have killed 986 emus, with a further 2,500 mortally wounded. The Emu War had been won by the humans. Australian humans.
Did they win?
I mean, who's to say how any other nation would have done? And yet, Once the belligerence and bloodlust had diminished with time, people still did think, that was very silly. And George Pierce's enemies never let him forget it, calling him the minister for the Emu War, even as he specifically never brought it up again. There are many officials and experts who can't bear to be reminded of some of their more ambitious efforts at emu destruction, wrote Sydney's Sunday Herald years later. And sure, it's embarrassing to be shown up by a bunch of emus.
Yep.
But maybe it's more embarrassing to get so worked up about it that you try to drive an entire species to near extinction with high-caliber automatic weapons. Or was the most embarrassing thing of all that it wasn't enough? The emus returned time and time again to Campion and Waugalan, their feathers laden with lead, but figuratively unruffled. And when the farmers petitioned the government for another emu war, the answer this time was no. Not a problem, the farmers said. What if we just dropped bombs on them instead? Like from a plane. Again, a hard no. Unwarranted was the word they used. So in the end, nobody got what they wanted.
So how
By supporting the Emu War, George Pierce had hoped to quell a secession movement in the state of Western Australia.
How'd they get rid of all the emus
then? In 1933, the state went ahead and voted for it anyway, only to be told by the United Kingdom that secession was illegal. And shortly thereafter, Western Australia voted Pierce out of his Senate seat. And in just a few decades, neglected by central government, the towns of Campion and Waugalan withered up and died. Campion today is a ghost town. No wheat, no farmers, no soldiers, nothing. Well, except maybe you'll see an emu or two. A little slower now, a little grayer. Just pecking and peeing at the lone desert sands where there was once a town. One can only imagine a single thought crossing their bird brains. Heck around and find out. But don't worry, fellow human. Just because the birds won the Emu
That's
War
interesting.
doesn't mean
Okay.
we're any lower on the food chain.
Okay, that's actually very interesting. The most bizarre thing. Maybe not the most bizarre. It's just a bit random. I thought that there was a different. I thought something different happened. I thought the outcome would have been different. But I suppose if you can't fully get rid of the emus, then I guess technically the best option would then to be not farm there. But I feel like even still, if you find somewhere else, then they might, try and look for resources and eventually still go to your new farmed area. I don't know. That's really random and kind of funny as well. So, let me know some more history-related stuff that I could react to and learn about. Thank you guys so much for watching. Absolutely love Australia. And although there are freaky-deaky certain type of bugs and whatnot there, it might be better to have to deal with that than some politics here. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this. And I hope to see you guys in upcoming videos. Leave a like rating if you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys later.